Première chose, je voulais dire à M. Mbari que je renouvelle les condoléances du Parlement européen pour la mort de Guy Cyril Tapoko, qui était mon collègue, qui s'occupait de l'observation électorale pour l'Union africaine. On a travaillé beaucoup d'années ensemble, donc je renouvelle les condoléances, M. Mbari. Le Parlement européen observe les élections en Afrique depuis the European Parliament is observing elections in Africa since 1996. So more than 60 elections have been observed. Myself, I've observed around 20 elections in the last years, and I can tell you that I have a mixed feeling. You have cases like Gambia or Zambia or Ghana where we can call it a success story. Then you have elections like the one in Ethiopia in 2005. Maybe people will remember that for some have been a disaster, for some others, big success. And there are now kids, young girls that are called Anna, and are now 15 years old, called Anna out of Anna Gomes, who was our chief observer at that time, that made an impact, such an impact that many, many girls have her name. And then you had catastrophe observation, like in Gabon, where our chief observer was spied, and there were fake news about her meeting the opposition secretly in an hotel with newspapers, really harassing the mission and expelling our experts. So it's really a story of mixed feelings. And then here, what I would like to tell you is, as Victoria was asking, to give you some reflection and maybe on how to do better, and try to make sure that these two communities, that election observers and the ones who are doing the assistance to the election, speak more to each other. Very often people call us, the observers, the Talibans, the Orthodox, that we just want to observe. We cannot use the word mediation. So if I use the word mediation with my colleagues in the IS, they will cut my head. So. But the reality is more gray. It's a gray area where even in countries, like I was mentioning before with Stefano, the case of Honduras, where we were there to do observation, but we've been obliged to do mediation because we were in the middle of almost a civil war where a chief observer of extreme left was telling the people that a president of extreme right won the election, and in doing so, she really prevented the civil war. She said there were not frauds, but for doing so, you have to be credible. You have to also think that you are not only there to present your findings, press conference, and then go, but everything is a process. And this idea of what Monica was saying, we need more follow-up. This idea of not only concentrating on election day, but consider the election in the electoral cycle, this now is a reality. This is really something that is in the agenda of the election observation community. And in the last years, the EIS has done a lot of progress also in being more consistent in this follow-up, in also setting up a database with recommendations. So I think a lot of work has been done. But if you look at Africa, we still see that only 15% of recommendations are implemented, and 20% are partially implemented. So the rate is still very low. We have example of Nigeria, where we keep observing since 2003, and no recommendations are not implemented. So someone wonder why we keep going to observing election in Nigeria. It's very expensive, and then you know how this logic works. Being in a country is also a question of visibility for the European Union, is also a question of being heavyweight. So when I was in the cabinet of Lady Ashton and proposing my colleagues in the geographical not to go to Nigeria, they were saying, Nigeria, you have to observe Nigeria, you have to be there, but this is not what should be behind a logic when you decide to observe an election. The logic should be the impact that you can have. And where we have noticed that the recommendation have an higher implementation rate, very often this is related with well-resourced and independent election management bodies, is what Mr. Mbari was referring to. This really a very positive correlation. When the election management body works and well-financed and independent, the recommendations are implemented. And this is why it's good that ECES is working in your project a lot with these management bodies. Then another positive correlation between the implementation rate and so the good implementation rate is when the domestic civil society and the citizen observers are strong. Because when we leave, they stay and they make sure that the point that we have raised in the recommendation are high on the agenda. And there, again, I know that you are working with the citizens observers, and more, especially in this time of COVID, when we couldn't really go and observe, we rely a lot on the work of the citizens observers. So continue to bridge all these links is very important, because citizen observers, as you know, they faced a lot of pressure in the country observed. When I was in Mozambique in 2019, the head of the local observers was killed by the police, and we knew that it was by the police because the police had a car accident just after the killing. So we went to see the president of the Mozambique, asking to launch an investigation that we knew that he was killed by the police, and our chief observer made a clear statement about that. So protecting the citizen observers and make sure that they have the resources to work, I think is really key. Then I wanted also to say a word about our cooperation with the African Union. I know that it improved in the last years. There are also projects between the African Union and European Union. It's clear that for you it's more difficult because you observe your own member states, and we don't. So sometimes it's easier for us to say things that you cannot say. But it's true also that you have a bigger role. I know that you develop conflict prevention, mediation, technical assistance, so you don't do only observation. And this sometimes is the problem. It's something that is a cleavage that also happen when UN is involved. When UN came with us to observe the election in Iraq, at the same time, they were the one providing assistance to the Iraqi system. At the same time, they're also observing. So it's not easy. So that's why we can be the bad guys sometimes. When we observe, we can tell the truth, maybe more than you, but we know that you are behind, that you are there. And at the end, even if election observation cannot be mediation, as we said, but it's clear that mediation is needed and conflict prevention is needed. I think we are proud that this European Parliament, the first that asked the conflict prevention people in the EU institution and the election observation people to sit together around the same table a couple of years ago and to speak more to each other. And to also have, because sometimes you have your chief observer that is in the middle of a conflict situation and has no means, no ability, no staff that can help him on that. So on this, talking more between the conflict prevention community, the election observation community, the election assistance community, the democracy support community, all of that, they really have to work together, because at the end, the main of the election observation is implementing the recommendation, helping the country to reform the system, and going there and just putting fingers is not the objective of our work. And just to finish on three challenges that we have ahead of us in this period of pandemic, we see how important the local observation is, because we couldn't go and observe in the last couple of years. We observed just really few elections. Also, the challenge of the fake observation, because you know that more and more you have institutions really like champignons popping up, and we saw, for example, in Mozambique that Russia was behind some of these institutions. They were even teaching how to cheat the European Union observers because they know the way we work. So we spoke with people that knew that the answer they have to give us. And speaking with various interlocutors, we understood that the Russians were intervening in this respect. And this is really something scary, because we have to be credible as international observers, and these fake observations are really awful. And the third challenge, of course, is digitalization in Africa of the elections. As you know, in the European Union, we are going back to paper. So even countries like the Netherlands that have had the digital, now they're back to paper because they fear the hackers, etc. And in Africa, more and more, everything is digitalized. And this is a question mark. How do you observe a black box? Can you really say that you observe properly the elections? And there is still a big debate that we are having, because we don't want to have experts that have access to the system, because we don't want to be the one who certify that the system is correct or not correct. It's not our job. We are just observers. But for example, we could observe the tenders, how this machine has been selected. I mean, there's other ways to do this, and to address all these challenges and all of that. The Parliament is launching this year an initiative report by the two co-presidents of my election democracy group, Mr. Tobé and Mr. McAllister. They are the chair of Foreign Affairs Committee and Development Committee. We will launch this debate and this resolution on the future of democracy support, election observation, try to really push the other institution to think that is really the moment to rethink the way we work. The methodology of election observation last of the year 2000. So for me, there's also a margin of maneuver of improving the links between us as observer and you as a provider of electoral assistance. So this is my message to you. Thank you for this opportunity, and I'm happy that now you can all go to lunch.